The number one priority of Republican state officials, particularly state legislatures across the country right now, aside from targeting trans folks and banning abortion, is to subvert democratic accountability. And in some states, they are attacking democracy precisely so they can ban abortion. For instance, Ohio. That is where Republican lawmakers are trying to make an end run around abortion rights supporters who are working to place a constitutional amendment on the ballot in November to guarantee the right to abortion. The opponents of that are pushing their own ballot initiative that would make it far harder to get such amendments passed, increasing the required threshold from a simple majority votes to 60%. And not only that, get this, the plan is to rush that measure, the one that raises the threshold, onto the ballot in August, right, in the dead of summer, low turnout, so they can head off the abortion rights referendum in November. That proposed change is so divisive, it drew hundreds of protesters to Ohio State House today, even has some Republican lawmakers concerned. A version of Ohio's attack on democracy is also happening in Texas. The Republican-led legislature there is advancing a bill that would allow the Secretary of State, appointed by the Republican governor, to, get this, just throw out election results in polling locations that run out of ballot paper. And here's the rub. The measure applies only to counties with at least 2.7 million people. There is only one county meeting this criteria, the overwhelmingly Democratic Harris County, home to Houston, which means a Republican Secretary of State would have unilateral power to throw out an election in the state's largest county and one of its most Democratic. There's also North Carolina. You've got a Democratic governor there, but the newly elected Republican majority on the state Supreme Court just reversed that court's own decision from just last year to allow aggressive partisan gerrymandering, a move that one of the two dissenting state justices derided as lawless and a, quote, shameful manipulation of fundamental principles of our democracy and rule of law. But while state Republicans work to rig democracy in their favor or to subvert the popular will of the people, one of the people who's been most active in fighting against these moves around the country is former U.S. Attorney General under President Obama, Eric Holder. Eric Holder now chairs the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and he joins me here tonight. It's good to have you on, Mr. Holder. I know that you have been very active in North Carolina, and North Carolina really seems like a wild and special case where you have a state that's pretty close. It's a 52-48 state. It's got a Democratic governor elected statewide twice, super majorities in the state legislature of Republicans. How did this happen, and what does it mean now that they've been given the green light to gerrymander even more aggressively?
Well, I think it means that democracy is at risk in North Carolina, as it is really around this country in the ways that you have just described. I mean, what happened in North Carolina was that there was a judicial election, and the composition of the court changed. You now have more Republicans than Democrats on the Supreme Court. And this new Supreme Court overturned a Supreme Court decision from just a few months ago that will now allow partisan gerrymandering to occur in North Carolina, a place with a supermajority of Republicans. And you know what's going to happen. I mean, this supermajority of Republican legislature is going to come up with districts that will favor, in an inappropriate way, they will gerrymander on a partisan and racial basis to guarantee that they can continue to control the North Carolina legislature. What the North Carolina Supreme Court did was not based on principle. It was not based on precedent, as courts are supposed to do. It was based on personnel, the change in personnel. Yes. And it puts democracy at risk.
We've seen these kind of doom loops, right? And Wisconsin's a sort of interesting comparison place, right? Wisconsin's sort of the other state where, if you look at statewide elections as a competitive state, it's not like a deeply conservative Republican state. You get 50-50 elections, you got a Democratic governor, and yet the gerrymander the state Republican legislature came up with sort of barricades them in against democratic accountability. There, the election of a Democrat to that Supreme Court seems to sort of augur in the opposite direction in terms of unwinding that doom loop. How do you see the way out of this kind of suffocation from these sort of super majorities that are gerrymandered into place in states like this?
It's a really difficult thing. You know, voter suppression is one thing, and that is something that I've worked against and something that I stand against. But if people have to wait in line 4 hours, if they have to get photo ID, that's something that people can do. It is extremely difficult to overcome a well-constructed partisan or racial gerrymander. Now, you would always look to the courts, whether it is to the Supreme Court in the state, lower courts in the states, to say that, the gerrymander that has been put in place is unconstitutional when one looks at the state's constitution. In North Carolina, what they've essentially done is to say, all right, we're going to allow this gerrymandered legislature to keep itself in power, and we're not going to have any control over that legislature because we're going to allow this newly conformed Supreme Court to essentially rubber stamp that which they are going to do. So we have to win elections to the extent that we possibly can. People have to be engaged in this. And progressives and Democrats have to play the long game. This is not something that can be episodic. If we want to have democracy, we have to do democracy. It means we have to vote. We have to organize. We have to get people focused on these issues like partisan and racial gerrymandering, which we've not really focused on to the degree that I think we should have.